Hamas receives 15 bodies and denounces signs of abuse and beatings. The Palestinian Ministry of Health announced today that it has received 15 bodies that had been held in Israel as part of the Gaza ceasefire agreement, stressing that the corpses show signs of abuse and beatings. The Gaza Ministry of Health announces the receipt of 15 bodies of martyrs released today by the Israeli occupation and the Red Cross, bringing the total number of bodies received to 135, said the Palestinian government, controlled by the Islamist group Hamas, in a statement. As in previous cases, the ministry warned that some bodies showed signs of abuse, beating, and were handcuffed and blindfolded. The Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis, southern Gaza, where the bodies are being taken, managed to identify only 7 people due to the severe state of decomposition. One of the hospital's doctors sent photos of one of the bodies to the Spanish news agency EFE, which reported that the images showed a deformed face with the head still bandaged with the cloth that allegedly covered the eyes. The hands remained tied behind the back, and numerous marks and wounds were visible on the arms. The deterioration of the bodies is so severe that Nasser Hospital had to organize meetings with the families of the missing, where images of the bodies are shown to help in the identification process. The return of prisoners and both living and dead hostages from both sides is part of the ceasefire agreement signed 2 weeks ago between Israel and Hamas. The agreement, brokered at the proposal of U.S. President Donald Trump, stipulated that for each hostage returned, Israel would hand over the remains of 15 Gaza residents who had been killed. Hamas has so far handed over the bodies of 10 hostages, with 18 still pending. The agreement also included a suspension of Israel's military offensive in Gaza, launched in retaliation for the Hamas attacks on Israeli soil on October 7, 2023. In 2 years of war, more than 68,000 deaths and 170,000 injuries have been recorded, although the real numbers are feared to be higher, as bodies continue to be found in areas from which Israeli troops have recently withdrawn. Gaza, Israel identifies body of hostage handed over by Hamas. The Israeli army announced this Saturday that it has identified the body of the hostage held in the Gaza Strip and handed over by the Palestinian Islamist movement Hamas to the Red Cross on Friday. 18 bodies are still being sought. The Israel Defense Forces, IDF, said the hostage returned by Hamas was Eliyahu Margalit, 75, who was killed in the October 7, 2023 attack. According to a statement from the office of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, the army has informed the family of hostage Eliyahu Margalit that his body was repatriated to Israel and that identification has been completed. Israel will make no concessions and will spare no effort until the return of all deceased hostages, down to the last one, the statement added. The body of Eliyahu Margalit was handed over by Hamas to the International Red Cross on Friday night. The Red Cross delivered it to Israeli forces inside the Gaza Strip before transferring it to the National Institute of Forensic Medicine in Tel Aviv for identification. The Israeli army said the remains have been returned to the family. The issue of the bodies is complex and requires time. Israel continues to demand the handover of the remains of the remaining 18 hostages. The Palestinian movement said on Friday that it respects its commitment to the ceasefire agreement and assured that it will continue to work to complete the process of exchanging hostages' bodies for Palestinian ones, reiterating that some remains are still under the rubble. However, Hamas spokesperson Hazem Qassem stressed that the issue of the bodies is complex and requires time, with some corpses buried in tunnels destroyed by the Israeli army, while others remain under the rubble of bombed buildings. For Israel, the delay in the handover of remains constitutes a violation of the ceasefire. Under the terms of the Gaza ceasefire agreement, signed by the U.S. president and in force since October 10th, Hamas was to release all hostages, living and dead, still in its custody by 9 a.m. GMT on Monday, October 13th. The Islamist movement released the last 20 living hostages on time, but since Monday has only returned 10 of the 28 bodies it held. A team of 81 members from AFAD, Turkey's disaster management agency, is awaiting authorization to enter the enclave via the Rafah border to assist in the search for bodies. They are ready to conduct search and rescue operations in the ruins, a Turkish official said on Friday, specifying that the mission includes the recovery of bodies of both Israeli and Palestinian victims. Access to Gaza, which remains fully controlled by Israel, is still highly restricted despite the truce. The ceasefire agreement provides for the reopening of the Rafah crossing between Egypt and the Palestinian territory, but it remains closed. Israel announced that it is expected to reopen the Rafah border on Sunday, but did not specify whether the reopening would be for people or for humanitarian aid. Amnesty International criticizes Portugal for banning face-covering veils. Amnesty International on Saturday condemned the approval by the Portuguese Parliament of the Chega Party's bill to ban face covering in public spaces, calling it discriminatory and a violation of women's rights. The proposal is discriminatory and violates the human rights of women who choose to wear a veil to cover their faces, said the organization in a statement. The Portuguese Parliament approved on Friday, in general terms, the Chega Party's bill banning the use of burqas and other face-covering veils in public spaces, citing women's rights and security concerns. According to Amnesty, this measure also has implications for the right to privacy, freedom of expression, and the right to peaceful assembly and protest. Expressing serious doubts about the compatibility of this ban with Portugal's obligations under international human rights law, Amnesty stressed that no policymaker should dictate what a woman can or cannot wear. Furthermore, the organization argued that no woman should be punished for exercising her faith, cultural identity, or beliefs. For Amnesty International, this ban, far from defending women's rights, actually violates the rights of those who choose to wear full-face veils, while doing little to protect those who are forced to do so, who may face greater exclusion or confinement as a result. While acknowledging that face-covering veils such as burqas and niqabs may raise security concerns, Amnesty International suggested that people may be required to reveal their faces when objectively necessary, for example, for identity checks, noting that this is already provided for under Portuguese law. What does the bill say? The ban on clothing designed to conceal the face in public spaces was approved on Friday by the Portuguese Assembly of the Republic. The initiative came from the Chega Party and received support from the PSD, CDS-PP, and Liberal Initiative. The PS, Livre, PCP, and Left Bloc voted against, while PAN and JPP abstained. The bill from André Ventura's party states that the goal is to prohibit the use of clothing designed to conceal or obstruct the display of the face, citing examples such as Denmark, France, and Belgium, which have already banned the Islamic veil in public spaces. The prohibition does not apply when such appearance is duly justified for health reasons or professional, artistic, entertainment, or advertising purposes, the document clarifies, adding that the ban also does not apply on airplanes or in diplomatic and consular facilities, and faces may also be covered in places of worship and other sacred sites. The bill now goes to committee for refinement before the final overall vote. If approved, the wearing of burqas or similar garments in public spaces will be banned. The prohibition in Portugal on wearing burqas and other face-covering veils follows a trend adopted by more than 20 countries in recent years, beginning with France in 2011. These countries, including Spain, Italy, Belgium, Denmark, and the Netherlands, among others, commonly justify the decision as necessary to protect secular values, combat religious extremism, or ensure public safety. Stay informed and join the conversation. Subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice matters.